Welcome to today's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Eric McGriff. Eric, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been seeing, it's weird that you and I have been in equipment finance. Well, you've been in longer than I've been, but I have been in the industry for 16 years and your face looks familiar, but I don't know if we've met at a conference before.
So yeah, I'm not sure. I've certainly heard of you, but I'm not sure that we've ever met. And thanks for rubbing it in my face, the fact that I'm old.
That wasn't a direct indication that you're older than me, considering like all this I have going on here. But appreciate you taking the time, nonetheless, sir, to chat with me today. So for those individuals, Eric, who might not know of your career in equipment finance, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've been in the equipment finance industry for 35 years now. I started right out of college. It was a great time to start in the industry. There was rapid growth that was occurring. I started at AT&T Credit Corporation, and that organization, over the course of the next 10 years was growing very rapidly. I benefited and was able to grow my own career along with the growth of the company. I had the benefit of a lot of really good mentors and coaches along the way that really helped me out. And, we grew from a fairly small organization in '86 to a very large one by the time the company was acquired by Newcourt. And company was acquired by Newcourt. Newcourt was acquired by CIT. Brings us about to the year 2000. I decided to leave the organization and I started my own consulting business in 2000 and managed that business for about 3 years, had a number of pretty significant clients, American Express, Lehman Brothers, and the engagement with American Express led to my next permanent opportunity with American Express, where I was the COO for the American Express business finance unit. Was there for a number of years, and then that business was sold to Key Equipment Financial. Notice a theme as I talk about my career. It seems that whenever I go somewhere, it winds up getting acquired. I stayed on board with Key for about a year during the transition, and then I joined US Express Leasing, which was a small ticket independent startup that was growing very rapidly over the period of a number of years leading into the economic downturn. At which point the organization was acquired by Tigris, and then a couple of years later acquired by Everbank. And I was with Everbank and then TIAA after Everbank was acquired by TIAA until December of the past year. Most of my roles have been in credit, operations, collections, in those areas. But now I'm looking forward to, doing some different things. Now that I've left TIAA, I've restarted my consulting business. So I'm taking on consulting clients, but I'm still looking at permanent roles within the industry. I'm still very much engaged in the ELFA and a variety of committees. I sit on the Credit and Collections Committee, the Research Committee, and also the Equality Committee. So that keeps me busy, and I'm also on the editorial board of the Monitor. So a lot keeping me busy these days, but it's although we've gone through a pretty bad time with the pandemic, I think we're on the cusp of some really good things for this industry.
No, and I agree. And I actually, when I was with a company called OSG, who was out of Englewood, New Jersey, so a little bit north of you, US Express, when you guys were starting that, I actually had them as a customer. So
yes, I recall.
When they were acquired by, all those things, I was sitting there kind of like, oh, okay. But, I just want to touch on something you just mentioned there. So from the ELFA perspective and being on those committees, what does that do for you? Because I know they do take time. I was just on a webinar, some of the service providers are putting together a couple webinars this year, and we just got off a call there. And I've been on those committees my entire career, and I think they've helped me immensely from a
Yeah.
networking perspective.
I
What do you
agree
think?
with that. You know, I was on the credit and collection committee on two stints. I was on for about 7 years in the 90s, and then I've been on now since 2011. The other committees are relatively new to me in terms of my participation, but I've found that it's not only beneficial in terms of networking and getting to know people in the industry, but it also gives you a lot of good insights in terms of how companies are addressing problems, be it regulatory issues or what have you. There's a lot of learnings, lessons, and sharing that occurs there. I think over the years, I've learned a lot about fraud mitigation from some of the activities that other companies have come up with to help mitigate fraud. I think it's beneficial for the member companies, for the individuals, and for the industry, the participation in these forums.
And the thing I appreciate about the most is you could be sitting side by side or across the table from a direct competitor that you might have just lost a deal to, but you still shake hands and there's still enough for everyone and you're still, in everyone's best interest. So, I mean, it's, that's great.
Absolutely.
That's one thing I really enjoy about the industry is we can compete all day long, but at the end of the day, we're going to sit down and, grab a bite to eat, maybe have a drink and figure out where we go from there.
Exactly. And like in my case now, in between jobs, I'm still a part of the industry and I'm still participating and actively involved in the industry, and that's beneficial. So I've over the years, I've come to appreciate being involved in the industry more and more. It does take time and there is effort behind it, but I think overall it's very beneficial. It's been very beneficial to me.
And that's a testament to yourself as, a contributor to the equipment finance industry, that even while you're in transition to what your next role is, that you're still a part of it. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to touch on the newly formed ELFA Quality Committee. You mentioned that one.
Sure. Yep.
Let's, if you don't mind, just give us a little background on that, and let's talk about the importance of that committee.
Yeah, the Equality Committee is about making sure that people in the industry are valued and respected regardless of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, mental capacity, what have you. And it's to make sure it's to work with the industry as an advocate. A lot of it has to do with best practices, whether it's best practices in hiring, making sure that you're able to access a diverse workforce. And I think you almost have to start back at square one, which is why. And I think, the social benefits are obvious, but there's also financial benefits for the companies that have diverse workforces. There's diversity of thought, diversity of ideas. And as we know, companies that have that kind of diversity tend to do better. They tend to prosper. They tend to make stronger connections with their customers and clients who also value diversity. And so really the industry is, the ELFA has created the committee to be an advocate, to work with the member companies to help improve diversity and make sure that everyone is able to benefit from best practices as it relates to equality and diversity and inclusion.
No, and thank you for that overview. And, I believe we probably first met, formally met about 3 weeks ago on one of those happy hours for that. And, it was nice to kind of meet some of the people who were on the committee and other people from the ELFA that were able to join us. So,
yeah. And that's really the first step of the committee, which is the whole awareness factor. Just, right. There's been a lot of events over the course of the last year to raise the awareness, to have conversations and dialogues around equality. And I think that's been really beneficial for people to have a better understanding of when you say equality or you talk about diversity and inclusion, what are you really talking about and why, right? I think being able to hear from individuals' firsthand experiences, it really helps to raise the consciousness of everyone around some of these issues and the importance of these issues. Let me give you another example. I mean, you were there at our last meeting of the Equality Committee, and Chris Snow, the chairman of the ELFA, joined that meeting, and she spoke about a number of things. But one of the things she spoke about was an article that was recently in Fortune magazine that talked about employment and the loss of jobs during the pandemic. And it was sobering to hear that 80% or so of the jobs that were lost impacted women, and women make up a lesser percentage of the total workforce than men, but they accounted for 80% of the job loss. And the job loss over the last year, in terms of numbers of job loss, wiped out 3 decades worth of progress on the employment front for women. 1 year wiped out 3 decades worth of improvement. So there's a lot left to do in the area of equality, be it for women, people of color, people of different sexual orientation. There's a lot of progress that really does need to be made. I just hope that as the economy comes back and jobs are built back, that women disproportionately benefit from those jobs coming back, since they disproportionately bore the burden of the job loss during the pandemic.
No, and that was an interesting statistic when she said that, for sure, because I didn't know that. And if you slice the data further, then you can look at women of color and see that they were even more disproportionately impacted. So it's times like that when things aren't going well that you start to see some of the disparities get even larger. So I guess while we're talking about that, what can executives like myself and other executives in equipment finance do to make sure we're doing our part, where we're not looking at someone's color, gender, sexual orientation? What can we do better?
I think the first thing is awareness and education, right? So educating oneself, and I think this is where the ELFA and the Equality Committee plays a role in helping to educate people. I think one of the things that a lot of people up until recently weren't really all that aware of were the incredible role that unconscious bias has in hiring decisions and things like that, where you're not really aware that there's a bias that's occurring. It's not a conscious thing. I think the majority of biases aren't conscious, right? It's not people are making a conscious choice to discriminate or to do this, that, or the other, but it's just through a lack of understanding. So I think education is always going to be the first step. And so I think also, you see more and more companies these days hiring chief diversity and inclusion officers so that they can bring awareness and education to their organizations. And I think that individual will be a conduit for a lot of progress that companies will make.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things. I know Sean Scampton on the happy hour was mentioning some stats in regards to how much more profitable or how much more efficient organizations are that have a diverse workforce. I didn't know that. So maybe it's just educating people on those numbers, because it's like anyone else in life. People don't want to be told what to do just because of, a decision. Yeah. But if you can educate them and say, hey, this is how much more productive you can be if you go down this path, that to me, I think would be very powerful. So we need to make sure we're getting that data in front of people.
The way that I think about it is, if let's say I have a small staff reporting to me, and everyone comes from my same background. They look like me, they talk like me, they think like me. How much of a diverse perspective are we going to have? And don't we then have some of the same blind spots, some of the same weaknesses, right? And it's through that diversity that you cover the blind spots and you learn about other people, other cultures, other perspectives, and you build a better business. And so it to me, it seems just logical that the business results improve based on having a more diverse workforce.
And it's amazing when you look at some of the organizations that that are in our industry, when they surround themselves with that, it just makes them more more nimble. They're more likely to pivot because they see some of these things coming. I mean, that's kind of one of the things that I'm running into now is we're looking to add to our team. It's like, okay, I don't need a bunch of my clones. I want to find someone who's going to make me better. And to your point, point out those blind spots, challenge, and let's, figure out the best way to grow the business. So
exactly.
Excellent. Well, we look forward, or I look forward, and I'm sure the rest of the industry looks forward to seeing noticeable progress, not just words. And unfortunately, that seems to be a lot where people like to talk about awareness. They like to talk, oh yeah, we're doing that, but it's like seeing noticeable change, being that action.
And for people who are impacted by it, that's really the key. When actions are taken, when it moves beyond just words. And so, we've got a full plate ahead of us and things to accomplish over the course of the next few years.
Well, and I look forward to doing whatever I can on my part to, assist in that charge, Eric. So, and then, so from a consult, did you have something else to add to that?
No.
Okay. So from a consulting perspective, obviously it's a little crazy right now in the industry. So there's a joke I almost want to make where it's like, wherever you're going, is that the next company that's going to be bought? but I don't want to. But aside from from a trend perspective, what are you seeing as you put on your consultant hat again?
I've spent the last 6-8 months talking to a lot of people in the industry, renewing old connections, and I'm hearing a lot of very consistent thoughts. One, I mean, obviously everyone has been impacted by the pandemic in terms of portfolio performance, in terms of volume fall off, but everyone universally says this is so much better than we thought it might be back in March and April of last year. This could have been so much worse. Now, mind you, there are certain segments that really got hit hard, right? Anything associated with entertainment, transportation, hotels were hit very hard. But on the whole, people have gotten through this fairly well. And I get this sense of optimism that everyone has that as the vaccines roll out and as we hopefully start to achieve herd immunity and can start to resume some sort of, I won't say return to normal, because I don't think we ever go back to where we were. I think there's a new normal that gets established. But whatever that new normal is, I think people by and large feel that there's some really good things ahead, that there's a lot of pent-up demand in the economy. And if we can just, get the pandemic off our back, we could be looking for an extended period of time of prosperity. And so as a result of that, you see companies now thinking about growth. The fact that they didn't grow, they probably shrunk last year. And with a lot of businesses, especially small ticket, being dependent upon scale for profitability, companies have a bit to make up to get back at that scale. And I think they do that, in a couple of ways. One is to acquire businesses, merge, acquire, or buy portfolio. The other is through internal growth, just trying to expand existing relationships. And I think the third is through the use of technology, right? To the extent that they can make their operations more efficient and become a little less dependent upon scale for their profitability. And I think all of those things are going to play a real important part of what we see across the balance of the year. You already see a lot of merger and acquisition activity occurring. You see a lot in mid-sized banks that's already been announced. I think you're going to see more of that. I wouldn't be surprised to see private equity startups or roll-ups occurring in certain markets. I think this is going to be a good time to be in the business. And so I think you're going to see a lot of activity like that. And I hear a lot of that kind of rumbling, everybody sort of feeling that's where things going. And that's all good. I would love nothing more than to see a period of prosperity for the business, growth in jobs. That would be great for all.
Yeah, and I know, in going before 2020, it was always like, okay, what is, we were slow growth, I mean, because we were growing for how many consecutive years, right? And it's like, okay, when's the dip coming? How bad is it going to be? And, if last year was the dip with the confidence that it's at now, I mean, like you said, I think we have some good years ahead of us in the short term for sure. And
what I'm really intrigued about is, what are the things that are going to be different, right? What are the areas of focus, places where people weren't as focused, but that they're going to be a lot more focused on in the future? You think of what work from home has done to the workplace, and I doubt we ever go back to quite the way we were. What does the new world look like, and how do businesses support that? And what are the technologies? And
I mean, I think
a lot of change.
I think of where you live, right? You're in Central Jersey. Mm-hmm. There's several people that work for finance organizations in New Jersey, but they drive from Pennsylvania just because the cost of living and everything else. It's just you get more house, and as opposed to them driving the 90 minutes to and from work every day, I don't see that going back. I don't see that happening. Now, it'd be nice, especially if you have the space to be able to fill it. But, I've been saying all along, as someone who's been on the sales side as a service provider my entire career in equipment finance, the days of you have an opportunity, let's get on a plane and get in front of them. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think you're going to have conversations like this. You're going to be able to qualify, and then it's still a handshake industry. So but instead of the qualification phase, you're going to get down to the finals and then feel people out. But
I absolutely agree with that, Jesse. I think, there was a lot of travel that I would do that really would be for a one-day meeting, or a meeting in the afternoon, so you fly down, you have a meeting, and you fly back that evening. I think those meetings are kind of gone, because there's no reason why you can't do a 3-hour meeting using Zoom and be very effective and save a lot of money for the organization and not lose as much time just in travel, right? You can be more efficient. One thing that really shocked me was that when everyone went to a work from home, you're seeing a lot of information now that supports productivity increase. People worked more, they worked longer, they didn't have to do the commute, so they kept working. And so I think that's a new aspect to it. I don't think in the past people thought about work from home as a productivity enhancement, right? They were very concerned, would you wind up losing productivity? But I think the actual experience has shown, no, it can actually be a productivity boost to an organization.
Well, and that opens up another can of worms that maybe we can discuss on another one of these, because it's like almost like the burnout, right? Where I've always worked from home, and I've always been in a sales role. So I was on vacation last week and I was still working. That's just what I'm used to. And for some of these people that, had that commute where they could kind of maybe decompress from the workday, but stress out over that or anything else, get away from the family, right? And go to work. What is that doing to their mental state when were working 50 hours a week before, but now because of that increased productivity and they can always be around, now they're working maybe 80 hours a week. Like, I think that's going to open up that question, and hopefully organizations are considering what, if you always want people to work more, right? But at what cost
you don't
is
want
that
them
going
to get
be in the long term?
Exactly. And that's a great point, because you do run the risk more of burnout, where people are just sitting there and working and working and working. I think it's especially compounded with the pandemic, where, okay, you weren't getting out at all, really. You're staying in the house and you're just there at the computer all day long working. I know I'm outside today because, we've been inside all winter with, snowstorms and everything else. And it's just good to get out and get a little break by being outside. So.
No, I don't blame you whatsoever. I should probably be doing that before it gets too hot here. That's for sure. So Eric, what's next for you in equipment finance?
Well, I would like to continue to contribute to the industry and maybe contribute in a greater or different way than in the past. And so, as I mentioned, I'm looking at permanent roles in the industry, a little bit different than the kind of roles that I've been in the past. I'd like to continue to participate in these industry forums and industry committees. There's I don't want to get ahead of announcements, but there's leadership training that's going to be coming to the industry, an offering, and I am going to be giving a master talk on leadership for that. And for me, that fits into, I mentioned earlier, mentorship and coaching. And I've received the benefit across my career of a lot of really good people who've been coaches and mentors to me. And I'd like to do more of that for that next generation. And so that's certainly something that's on my plate as well. I kind of look at this and say, I'm entering into that last 10, 12 years of my career, and I really want it to be meaningful and to be able to give back in a certain way to the industry and to help foster strong leadership within that next generation.
No, and that's awesome. And if you need any help with that initiative, just let me know. I've had a few people over the last year kind of reach out to me, and they're like, hey, I need some help. And you almost go out of your way to help them, because when you see someone and they're applying what's worked for me, because I didn't get where I am today just because of me. It was other leaders in the industry who helped me out, who gave me those introductions, who told me what to do, told me to get involved in this, helped me get involved. And now it's like, okay, I want to kind of exactly what you said, give back.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That's excellent. And wrapping up here, I always ask people a little fun fact about yourself. If you don't mind sharing.
Fun fact. I don't know if I have any really fun facts, other than I kind of mentioned it a little bit, this working outside. I worked outside from March 15th of 2020 until the end of November. And there was only one day where I didn't spend at least some portion of my day outside. And that was the day we got hit by a tropical storm and it was just too windy. So I figured out solutions for rain, for light wind, and I spend all of my time outside. So as different as from the workplace environment as I could possibly get. But it's been great. I'd suggest people give it a try. I find I have a lot more energy and focus when I'm out in the sun.
So note to self, to future employer, Eric wants a deck outside of his office.
Yeah, exactly.
Just note to self.
Yeah, or figure out a way to put in a sunroof or something, right?
as long as they don't put you on the roof.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want that.
Exactly.
All right, Eric. Well, thanks again for joining me, man. Look forward to hopefully meeting you in person somewhat soon.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get through this and we'll be able to get together in person. But thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time.
No, absolutely, man. I look forward to all these exciting initiatives that you're doing and working hand in hand with you on a couple of them if needed. Thank you.
Will do. I will never turn down an offer of help. So you will hear from me.
Sounds great, Eric. Have a good one, man. Take care.
All right. You too. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.